Yeah, when you're on the rock, when you're getting your ass whooped as the car is moving, as you're getting your ass whooped,
getting that hand from the back,
getting your ass whooped in transit is crazy. No, it ain't no in the back. I'm sitting next to him, so he's just got a clear line of fire, right? In transit, it's crazy. This is a weird world. I just found out. So now, hey man, where you going tonight? You going out? You got something? I mean,
This man, like five of them things.
oh, maybe a month.
Because we've been working at this place for a month. Our last episode was 185.
No, it was 186. We did one. Yeah, we did one right afterwards.
Oh, it was that morning.
After we had watched The Whale, we came back in here.
It was like a day before all this happened.
I was wearing a turtleneck like a lot of people do when they want to apologize for something.
For sure, your blue turtleneck?
Yep.
But that was before anything went down. We didn't even know this was happening. Remember?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think it was either that after. No, it was because we were off that day because it was Thursday before we started our new jobs.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have no recollection of any of this. But okay.
Yeah, because you said, how funny is it that this happened after I already sort of had apologized for what it may have sounded like before.
Yes, I did say that. Right. And it seemed like
the time,
all that shit had gone down, and then I came back and spoke about it when indeed that was not the case at all.
That was Thursday morning?
Yeah.
All that shit happened Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, I'm just, when I speak about stuff, I have a decent, I have a decent understanding of like what's coming out of my mouth and how it may sound in various ways. Sometimes I just let that shit fly because that's just gonna be the case sometimes. Or you just gotta let it fly and let the cards fall where they may. But yeah, when I try to speak about things, one, it's helpful for me to think that way, because like as I'm thinking something through, in order for you to, or I think it seems to me, in order to truly think something through, you have to be having that inner dialogue and questioning yourself along the way. Like you make a statement and then you say, it's like the scientific method, just like in verbal form.
Right.
Like you're stating a hypothesis and you're like, well, this is what I think is the case with whatever thing. And then you say, but what if it's not? Like, what if this or what if that? And so that's sort of the way I think about stuff. So I counter arguments and counter points just as a natural progression of thought as I speak about stuff. So sometimes it seems like I'm actually responding to an actual human or set of humans that has said something to me, but I'm not. It's just the set of perspectives in my mind that could validly contest the thing that I'm stating at the current moment.
I think I said it on the pod. I absolutely love that about you, because I think that's one of my shortcomings, is that I forget to take a moment and to breathe and to look at it from other sides and angles. So I think I said it on the pod. I was like, that's well done. Also, I think that when you speak, things are just pretty concise. Like, I think there's hardly any room for interpretation.
Well, that's not true, right? Because you and I will have conversations and you won't be understanding what the fuck I'm talking about for quite some time. And it takes a lot of time to get through different things. And that could be having to do with the high stakes of emotions in any given conversation, or, you just your stake in it, like your emotional stake in the topic can just very easily get in the way. And as I told you yesterday, I feel like it's very, very easy for people to get lost in their arguments and discussions. Yeah. Because if you are truly not out of the way, egotistically speaking, in trying to solve the problem and I think a huge part of people, like conversations going left in conversations, is that at least one person, or maybe or possibly both, and then it's really a wrap, is not making it easy on the other person for being wrong in any sort of space.
Okay, right.
I also there's a lot of problems, right? Like, for instance, everyone is looking, well, not everyone, but a lot of people are looking for information on the Israel-Palestine situation right now. A lot of people are trying to find podcasts. A lot of people are trying to find anything to give them some understanding of what is happening, what was the origin, where are we at now? You know, just give me an idea, because we're not going to become like political scientists, but just like, just give me the rough outline of what's going on. Yeah. And then Uzima sent me the Coleman Hughes, which you've seen on other podcasts before, and he seems like an astute young person, right?
An objective, astute person.
Journalist. And whatever the other guy's name is, I forget what his name is. But he is Palestinian. He's also like a political pundit of sorts and whatever. I don't know all his accolades, but he does seem knowledgeable. He seems well versed in what is happening. And the only thing that I don't like, and we can bring this over to like the Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson debates, or like any sort of intellectual debates that we've ever watched. The only thing that I don't like about debates is the fact that it's a debate, right? It's like the same reason, like when I told you that I would, if I ever went back to school, like I would be thinking about guidance or therapy, psychology. It would be in that realm, right? The only issue there is you have to ask, why would you want to do that? Oh, well, you would want to help people. You would want to speak to them about these things. This is ultimately just fascinating to you, the human mind and how it manifests itself in actions and all this sort of stuff. Do you need to do that in order to have that experience? Right. Right? You know what I mean? So I like what I do here, and I feel like there are a lot of similarities here, except I'm also able to express myself and to counter things in certain ways that I don't think that is necessarily practiced in that realm in therapy. I also don't know what exactly is allowed or not. I don't know how structured.
It's like a podcast.
Well, we'll definitely talk about like the group book and like what we got from this group therapy book. For sure. I forgot who wrote it. Oh, Christy Tate.
Yeah, Christy Tate.
But the point I was bringing that up is that well, now I have to try to remember what was the point of me bringing up.
You were talking about debates and...
Well, yeah. So the point being is that there's this aspect of it that I believe if there was another component added, like another component of truthful resistance added, then it would make things much better. Now, you might say there's truthful resistance inside the debates that they're having, but the issue is that like in the debate, there that conversational aspect of, oh, you're right. Oh, you're right about that thing. Like, let me change my perspective. Okay, well, let me. They don't do that. They don't pivot based off of something good that they heard in an honest and verbal way. Of like, those words don't come up in debates. It's just like disagreement after disagreement, and after you have stated a position on something and then someone debates that, you don't say, oh, that was a good point, maybe I've been looking at this incorrectly, tell me more about that thing. You bring up now your next point that is supposed to be a counter to that, or it's some red herring in a way that takes the person's attention off of the main point. And that's, for debates purposes, which is a weird set. It might be a weird set. It might be a weird set of purposes, because the people listening are getting a ton of information, right? And they're seeing different angles to things, which is what I got when I watched this video. You had Coleman Hughes that was clearly on the side of Israel.
Was that advertised as a debate?
Absolutely.
Really?
It may have said discussion, or it may have said debate on, but I can promise you, if you listen to it, it's an hour and a half debate, and Coleman Hughes is debating on the side of Israel, and he is saying that this can be. He starts with this thing that Uzima and I both thought was fundamentally flawed, which was that in this you can definitely break it down to good guys and bad guys. And that it needs to be broken down to good guys and bad guys. Yes.
Oh, understood.
So he's coming from the side of just like, there's definitely a good guy and a bad guy in this situation. We can talk about the level of civil unrest that either one of them have evoked, but there's a good guy and a bad guy in this. And then the other guy not only is Palestinian, right, but he has family, he has friends there. Like he's heavily invested in this. He's
not just watching it on the news.
But he's also intellectual and has been following this for many, many, many years.
Right.
And so I think that coming from diametrically opposed positions like that, they did the best. It was the most civil, and it got spicy at certain points in it, but it was the most civil understanding, and I learned a ton about it. But it's just a weird space, because I think that people need to hear certain types of conversations more. I think that was like a decent one, because they were so civil and they were able to, expound on a lot of different topics, but they also didn't agree on a lot of things, and that's fine. They didn't explicitly move their beliefs or points much. But yeah, it's just, debates get weird. Debates get tribal. Debates get egotistical. You're on a stage in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So moving backwards, so to speak, and saying that someone has a good point, maybe you ought to change your position a bit. I suppose it could make you look ill-prepared or not so well-versed, right? And then I assume that people would feel insecure and vulnerable about their position, their status being critiqued because they lost, or they were wrong, or they didn't consider a certain element or component of a varying perspective.
Right.
And that's weird. And I think that that's a part of the weird game within debates, because I think that if you are wrong or you have not considered a certain perspective, you should absolutely state that you haven't considered that certain perspective, or that you were wrong, and try to wrestle around with that in your mind. And I think that the doing that is an extremely important part, but I think that the showing that is also an extremely important part for your interlocutor that now trusts you a bit more. And which is funny, because I was just reading about this in this book, Drunk, How We Sipped, Danced, and Stumbled Our Way into Civilization. I think that people should read this book. It's actually very interesting. It's one of the
Slingerland?
Edward Slingerland.
What a name.
Yeah, also the author of Trying Not to Try. That's probably certainly an interesting book too.
I'm sure.
But yeah, one of the more interesting books that I've picked up, and I haven't been picking up books recently in the past year. So it was interesting that this one called out to me. But it is that reason. So your interlocutor will now further trust you, because they're like, oh, this person can admit when they're wrong about something. Which is what's and it's also good for viewers, listeners, to be able to see when someone admits that they're wrong. I think that these are things that need to be put into the ethos out there, so people can know it's okay to feel that way and to concede defeat, right? Which is not really defeat. It's really, we have a formulation problem with a lot of things. Like, we form them incorrectly. Like, it's a defeat.
That formulation is something that's wrong in a lot of people's psyche, because I think that what you're saying in your mind sounds much better than what it is like in real life. I think that people who follow whatever.
You're saying you, like, in a general sense, like human beings.
Yeah, I don't see people in a general sense looking up to someone they look up to and then them admitting they were wrong on a big platform, on their podcast, on the news station, wherever, and then being like, oh, wow, like, what a respectable move. I think it would be like, oh, that's a bitch. Like, you folded. You know, because I'm saying all of this, and again, I also acknowledge I don't hang out around a lot of people. I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't speak to too many people. But in the 27 years I've been alive, I am one of the few people that I have come across that, like, will admit to certain failings and feel okay with that. Like, I didn't see that from my parents. I didn't see that really in TV for the most part. I didn't see that in school. I didn't see that in college. And you don't see a lot of people admitting they were wrong or just changing their perspectives until I met you. And then I started listening to Joe Rogan and Sam Harris and all of these other people. You know, like, I feel like that's very, very rare. And I think that people don't realize the value in that. Mm-hmm. So if they were to see it, it would just register incorrectly in their mind and their psyche. Mm-hmm. You know, it just wouldn't be taken for what it is, which is a valiant thing to do and a responsible one at that as well. So I would hope that is how people interact with it. But for some reason, I feel like it wouldn't be that way for the most part.
Yeah, that's when...
Because people don't do that in their own personal lives. So I don't see how they would be able to, you know, provide value to that situation as well.
The same way that I think anything really happens. You move through a leader. It's not the way everything happens, but it's a way that I think a lot of things happen.
What do you mean?
Cultures built, well, I mean, according to this book, through a lot of drinking together. Mm-hmm. But and it makes a lot of sense that alcohol has been such a part. Alcohol, as well as just other intoxicants, have been a huge part of human civilization since the beginning of time. You know, well, as soon as they could, it seems like it was so long ago.
As soon as it was found,
that they started doing it. They believe, like, modern history and science believes that agriculture, which is truly the robust emergence of civilization, came from harvesting grains for beer. People thought that it was bread for a long time, which would have made sense. But people now think that beer came before bread, as far as plotting out
that makes
land.
Sense, because isn't whiskey or whatever made from barley too? So they were probably just trying to get rye, all of that out there.
Some people think that it was bread, and someone had like fucked up some bread, because a lot of things come from accidents, right, and like you fucked up some bread, and so you just like let it sit there, and you went on, and then you came back and it looked different and it smelled different. So then they were like, what's this? And they started drinking it, and then they started feeling away. Oh shit, like we got something here. And then it continued on from there. But just I won't go through everything that's in this book, but just the aspect that correlates to what we're speaking about now of truth, of just as gazelles have gotten faster through time because they've had to get away from fucking lions and cheetahs and shit, then the lions and the cheetahs, they get faster through time. So you have this arms race, right? Like people are just, everything's evolving to get away or to kill, right? It's just predator prey, just to survive. And so we've gotten really good as humans at looking at people's facial expressions and their tone of voice and their body language and all these small things that we don't consciously think of. So we call it the vibe.
Right.
We said, I didn't like his vibe. He gave off the wrong vibe. Or like, I really love this vibe. Like the vibe, but what that really means is that you're unconsciously calculating all these very nuanced variables that we have evolved to calculate. But we don't know that because we're just regular as humans. So we just call it the vibe.
Right.
But then that means that through time, people have become better liars as well, because they understand that other people can see them and stuff like that. So they try not to leak out as much facial expression that they're actually feeling in response to whatever it is that you just said, because they don't want you to know how they really feel. So they get better at it. And it seems like throughout millennia, people have just taken time to make sure. That's why in certain business meetings in certain countries, whether it be with war or just business deals or people coming to your house or people coming in to settle in your land, whatever the case is, when strangers are around, for a lot of people in certain cultures, we're going to drink first. Like, we're going to get intoxicated first before we move on to the next step. Yeah. And the reason being, it's been calculated because I need to know who you are and I need to see more of you. And even though I can look at you and try to pick up on all these nuanced things, I could be, just stupidly trusting.
Yeah.
And unnecessarily trusting, or I can miss things. But if we drink together, a lot of the prefrontal cortex is going to be diminished from the whole engagement, which means your regulation is going to be diminished. Your emotional regulation, just your conscious awareness of things is going to be diminished, which is going to allow me to see more of your true intention and things of that nature. So that's fascinating that, it's been around so long. And this book, the way that he goes into it with substances and just going through all different sorts of cultures through all time, it's so fascinating that this happened to be the case. Now, again, as always, I forgot exactly where I was going with all of this. But culturally, there are so many formulation problems. This thing of not wanting to be wrong because it makes you feel insecure about yourself. It makes you feel like you don't know everything, which means we have like a huge humility issue amongst human beings. Is what I see.
I think it's even deeper than humility. I think it's just human design to not know everything and to be perfect. And I think people forget that.
Well,
I mean, is that the same thing?
Yeah, because it means that you don't have the humility to understand that human beings are just human beings and you're not omniscient.
Yeah.
Now, I was thinking the other day when I was in the bathroom, I was wondering if, they probably can't run a study now because they didn't take the data from the past, but if there had been an uptick if you could take a survey from this is the 1500s, 16, 17, 18, 19, and then into the 2000s, of all of the core characteristics that a narcissist has, and like if there has been an uptick in narcissism. I think I've seen articles in the past about just the age of narcissism that has emerged with social media. And I think immediately you just think of like wanting to show and everybody wanting to show and look good and look good and look good. And so like that being some at least indicator of it. But I was wondering if because of the amount of information we have at our disposal, we start to think of ourselves as omniscient beings. We start to think of ourselves as much smarter than we actually are. And we then feel insecure about not knowing certain information when we feel like a lot of other people know information that we don't know.
That's kind of where Daniel was coming from, right?
What
he says that he hates not knowing something when someone else does or something along those lines.
Yeah, he came on the pod and said that he doesn't like to not be able to contribute into to a conversation which people are speaking about, whatever the case is, right? So he wants to know about everything.
Yeah.
And I get that sentiment because it's something I've heard a lot. Also, you know, Cindy came on with Will a long time ago, and this is one of the things that she said, that like she will get very defensive in a conversation because she hates feeling like she's wrong about something. And I think that that's something on every level, like on some level, everyone has felt at some point in time, like not wanting to relinquish that. And I think it makes for a bad learner. Right, because that means that you're the kid in the class that won't raise his hand because you're afraid of the public ostracization that comes with like, oh, this motherfucker don't know this thing, even though there are going to be other people in the class that also don't know the question to, you know, or the answer to the question that you're about to raise your hand and ask. You don't know that they don't know, but you just feel like you're the only one that doesn't know because everyone's not raising their hand. You know,
a quick little side note about that. I've always been the inquisitive person. And with not knowing any English, I will never forget how I shut myself down in school for so long. And I probably would have excelled. But I was terrified of being laughed at over and over because when you don't know English, things don't stick. And I remember being in I got here in 6th grade and I didn't know any English. And I think I was in 9th grade or 8th grade or something like that. And we were talking about like learning the years and before Christ, after Christ, whatever it was.
Oh shit, that must be tricky.
It was trippy as fuck. And I remember asking a question that I didn't realize had already been answered earlier in the class. And I was like, what does this mean? Why does this happen? And I remember the teacher going over it. And I think he was nice about it, but everyone else like started laughing and like, oh, like we just went over this. And I'm like, well, obviously some of you guys didn't know this because I can see it here. And now I'm never going to ask a question again because I'm terrified that I'm going to be ostracized in the class every time I ask a question, which is why I think I did not do well in school for it. Like I didn't care. I was like, I don't really know the language that well. I'm trying to figure this out, and we're talking about the years.
Yeah, Uzima and I talked about that when him and I were speaking about personality types. And, you know, the 5 big personality types, openness. I'm going to try to go through them because I think that it's the word ocean. So it's openness, creativity. What would E be? No. I forgot which one that is. But then A is agreeableness, and then neuroticism. So I'm really forgetting what E is on that. I don't know. I'll let it come back to me. Anyway, so you have those, and we're talking about, hopefully, glad I remember the A, because that's what I'm wanting to talk about, which is he was saying on agreeableness, he felt like he was too far on that side of the spectrum and he needed to. And
sorry, what do you mean by that? That he's too agreeable or not enough?
Too. Like to the point where in conversations, he had noticed that when it comes to not knowing something, he's trying his very best to use context clues to figure out what the person is talking about if he doesn't know, as opposed to asking that person. And I think the agreeableness in that is he doesn't want to bother the person. And they're speaking about something and they're trying to get through it. And then now I have to slow down their train of thought and ask them what they mean about this thing, so that then now they're just like, oh, and I guess in his mind and a lot of other people's minds, you're like, and I felt this before for sure, which is like, oh, now I got to break this shit down because I'm trying to get through this thought, but now I got to break this thing down, you know, so that they understand what I'm talking about. And I mean, inherently that's an issue.
Yes.
Right. Because I understand you not wanting to do that. But if you guys are having a conversation, the whole point of the conversation is that you understand what they're saying, right? So you would have to ask if you don't understand something, because how about this? There's a different way to look at it. How disrespectful is it of someone's time to have them talking about some shit at your face and you don't know what they're talking about? But you also don't ask about it. So now they've just been talking. You don't know what they're talking about because there was a huge nugget. It may have been the origin of what the fuck it is they're talking about. It could be integral, like literally the quintessence of what it is they're talking about. And you're not asking any questions. So you're just lost as they're talking and you're just picking up small little things, but you don't understand the overall gist. And now you've wasted their time. You wasted your time. You're just walking away with no sort of understanding. And that's another way to look at it. So hopefully that like helps reform that.
You know, I just experienced this as an adult recently. You know, with my new job, I'm learning about all these things that I have never heard before. And we have this trainer whom I don't believe to be apt for this job whatsoever. Like, she's so not a people, but she is, she's nice, but she's like someone's grandma that shouldn't be doing this because she doesn't know how to speak to people. Nonetheless, she said the word peptides, and she said, this is the most important thing, you know, the peptides and this. And I said, I'm sorry, like, what are peptides? And she looked at me and she went, like, you should really do the modules. I was like, well, I would love to be signed up for them because I didn't know there were modules. And then you know what she had to do? She had to Google peptides because she couldn't even tell me what peptides really were.
Yeah.
I was like, you can't be upset at me because I could see it. She was like disappointed. I'm like, well, I don't know what you're speaking of. And you don't even know the answer to it either. Like you're more upset that I asked you about something that you didn't know about that you most certainly should have known about.
Right.
Because I understand you having to pause. Like, I give room for there to be some natural annoyance there. I don't expect you to be like, oh, awesome, let me just shut down my whole entire schedule, even though I have to leave in 45 minutes because you have this one question. But you should know what you're talking about.
And that's another humility issue. Like, not having the humility to let that person know that you don't know, right? But all of this goes back to the credentials. Right, it goes back to it hurting your credentials or hurting your perceived status. It's like, oh, if I show, like, now I'm upset with her because I'm really upset with myself for not knowing this information, and she's now exposing that. Even if it's just us two in the room, she's exposing that I don't know this information, and that makes me upset.
And this was actually the same lady, which just makes so much sense, that was like trying to quiz me after she went over, like, she read everything from the PowerPoint. Nothing was from her memory or in her own words. And she was like, so what did you learn? Like, remember, so-and-so are going to ask you questions, like, and like, they'd like to quiz and you have to know. And I was just overwhelmed. But then we have the other rep whom I really, really enjoy. And I was like, hey, so we have these two products and they seem to be similar. I was like, I don't know how to, what is the difference between them? And she was like, actually, I really don't know the answer to that. And she looked at the owner and she was like, hey, like, do you know the answer to this? And she was like, well, I think it's because of the molecular level. And I was like, well, what is molecular level and what is the difference? And she was like, oh, let me go get my notebook where I wrote down from the reps that explained this to me. You know, there was never a moment of like, oh, you know, like, it was just like, oh, I don't know. And actually, maybe I don't know. So let me go here.
Bro, teaching is difficult.
It's crazy.
Don't get it twisted. Like, teachers, professors, that's a hard fucking job.
You have to
people don't understand that. That's why getting older, when my parents always told me to go get the fucking dictionary when I didn't understand something that the adult said, but I wanted to know what the adult said. They were like, no, go get a dictionary.
Yeah,
like, they sent me on that search. And it may have been one because they didn't know how to explain it. It may also have been because they wanted me to go do the search, because that builds a resilience, it builds a better understanding, and it builds the practice of going and looking for information yourself, as opposed to just having someone tell you an answer to something.
That's a good habit to have.
It is.
Hey, don't ask someone, look it up.
Like, find it that way, because what they tell you may be very different than what you go find. Right. And so it's important to go find that thing. So when I sent that text message to, you know, my sibling chat and my group friend chat about, you know, just me saying, hey, guys, I apologize for ever over explaining things in the past. Right. Like when Anthony Stokes said that sometimes we just need a grilled cheese and I'm doing too much. I'm trying to put together a 4-course, you know, meal. And, you know, so I playfully sent that out. But there's definitely a huge aspect of that I do not apologize for.
For sure.
Because it's literally just like trying to think on a molecular level. Right? And it's not even trying to, it's just where my brain goes. It's the very first place that my brain goes is trying to discover the fabric of any idea that I'm thinking about. And so I'm working with grains. Right. I'm working on a very granular level. I'm working with the individual threads and weaving them together. So when I'm trying to think through an idea, and the terms that come up to me are inversely correspondent.
Right.
And then I'm like, wait, no, there's an easier word for that. Oh, opposite.
Right. I'm sorry. Let's take a quick bathroom break.
All right, go for it.
Sorry.
And we are back.
Yeah, that's why.
So let me
go ahead.
just finish this point because I took time to try to remember what it was I was talking about because I completely forgot.
That was awesome.
As soon as you stopped, as soon as like bathroom came up in the conversation, the last thing I remember was bathroom.
Oh my god!
So then I had to like try to go back and say like, what was I even talking about?
I feel like my bladder is just older now.
All right, we'll get on the older stuff.
Go ahead.
So let's see. What was I talking about?
Last word you said was
inversely correspondent. Yes. So the whole point being is that I've heard, in my understanding, is that truly knowing something is being able to then tell it to the next person, right? And it would be best if it could be told in your own words, like your own understanding of the thing. And so a lot of people don't have that. Like they've read some shit and maybe they feel like they have inherent understanding of it, but they don't know how to explain the thing. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people have with grammar for their language. They know how to use it to a certain degree. They don't know why they know how to. They don't know the actual rules. But like if you talk to me about certain Spanish, like I've taught you about certain things about Spanish and like what certain rules apply. And I'm like, that can't be the case because this rule, like that's not an exception to this rule. Like this,
can't tell you about them.
Right. So I did forget like the base of where we were at in that conversation. Why would I have been talking about?
Well, you were talking about the text first that you sent, the sibling group chat.
Oh yeah, just being able to, just being able to explain things on a molecular level. I mean, that's pretty much my point on that. I guess is that you want to get to a point if you know of truly understanding something and thinking about what that thing means. Like, you know, what does a word mean? Like a word it does have a definition for it, which are comprised of more words. And it's like, so what does that mean? Like how many ways can you explain that idea? And I think that just the more words you get and it helps you sort of understand an idea more. Sort of like we were watching Tom Bellew, or however you say his name, the entrepreneur that speaks at 1,000 words per minute. His last name. He's crazy. And he was speaking about people being able to perceive, and he's like, it's been researched that the more hues of blue that you are taught, the more shades of blue you can see. You can distinguish between different blues if you learn different words for blue. Right, you're gonna have your teal, your navy blue, your royal blue.
Favorite color, the blue.
That's a red.
Oh, that was a red.
Yeah,
I thought it was blue.
Yeah, and it's a word that I don't remember. It's a very long word. It's got like it's like 17 letters. It's a lot. It's a lot of.
I thought it was blue.
But that's pretty much why I sent that text message out and just my ideas on trying to get to the core of something. I don't
Yeah, no, I mean, to just stay there for a second, that has easily been one of my favorite parts about being with you. It definitely got to be a lot at the beginning of our relationship, but it was fascinating to be able to hear someone explain things and talk about things from a molecular level because I had never really listened or been around stuff like that before.
Oh, another point that I never finished was about the whole like evolutionary thing of Instagram and just social media and narcissism, and like if they could ever run that test. Like I don't know if that's the case, or if 100 years ago, 500 years ago, they thought some shit. Before Galileo came around, it was just like, oh, everything revolves around the earth as opposed to the sun. So maybe we've always felt like we were much smarter and much more knowledgeable than we always are. So that's why I thought it'd be interesting to have that test. I don't know if, what technologies, it could be any level of technology we have. We think that we're further along. We have understandings of things that we actually don't. But I do believe at the base of all this, there are humility issues. We won't say when we're wrong. We don't want to ask questions. We don't want to seem stupid. We don't want to slow people up, which is, again, ridiculous because you're still wasting their time because they're just speaking at you and you don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. And you're just like nodding your head. But it's fascinating. There's definitely a huge formulation problem. That's why I decided to read this book drunk, because I felt like there's a formulation problem around like the alcohol, as there are many, many other intoxicants. Relationships, and we can definitely get into this, has a huge formulation problem. I told you I was watching the divorce lawyer. I believe his name is James Sexton, which is also hilarious.
That's funny.
On the Lex Friedman podcast. I just watched like a 20-minute clip or something. But this idea, and this was even reassured after I watched that episode and went to work, and I had this guy talking to me about relationships. And he's like, damn, man, like, I don't know. He's younger, but he's like,
he's the one that asked you about me.
Yeah, and he's like, damn, man, like, being in a relationship, like, it's starting to seem cool. Like, it's starting to seem like it'd be a good thing. I'm like, yeah, it can be.
It can be.
It can also very much suck. And, you know, a lot of people are having that experience where you don't want to go home. We've heard stories from friends of, like, bro, like, can I have some more hours? I don't want to go home from work. Like, I don't want to go back to that place. Or, you know, you're in there and you're just trying to spend more time in the bathroom. You're trying to plot it out.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I leave work at 5 o'clock. Roughly my partner and I's, like, in my bedtime is 9 p.m., 9:30. Like, okay. I'm getting off work. Bedtime's 9:30 p.m. She's there.
She
lives there. She's there right now.
We sleep together.
So by the time I get home, she will be there. So there's no buffer time once I get there. It's not like I get there and then she gets home an hour later. Like, she's gonna be there as soon as I open that door. So
my heart hurts just like hypothetically speaking about this.
So okay. So drive is a 32-minute drive home, but I do know this other route I can take, and that'll make it a 45, 50-minute drive home. I can stop by, maybe get some food. No, I can't stop by and get food because she already cooked the food, so I got to eat with her. So, you know, maybe I stop by, get a drink real quick, and I'm just, you know what I mean? She knows what time I get off, so she might hit me up and be like, where am I at? Maybe I just got to tell her, you know what I mean? I'm just stopping for some gas or something like that. You know what I mean? I'm getting something from the grocery store for her, so maybe now I got to stop by the grocery store too, because I got to get that thing that I just lied about. So I can get a little drink or whatever, you go to the grocery store. Like, okay, I maximize that time. So now it's an hour before I get home. So I get home around 6:30. You know, I get home around 6:30. And maybe I can go to the bath. Hey, babe, hey, how you doing? I go to the bathroom and I'll pick up a book or I'll get my phone out. I can probably get a good 30 minutes in the bathroom because I was like, babe, I gotta go poop.
30 is a lot.
No, but I gotta poop, but I gotta take a shower.
Okay.
Because I gotta get ready for the night. So I gotta poop take 20 minutes. Man.
20 minutes? You're gonna get a hemorrhoid. What you doing for 20 minutes, babe?
I gotta poop. I gotta, you know, go in there, wash. I gotta wash my hair. I gotta wash the body. I want to make sure I'm really clean.
You know, this type of guy is also doing a little masturbation.
You know what I mean? Might have to rub one out real quick. You know what I mean? And then I get out. So now it's about 7 o'clock. I only got two, and now I don't, you know what I'm saying? 2.5 hours left. Now I'm going to have to give her some time. Whatever that means for me. Maybe we get in arguments a lot. Maybe they're just talking about some shit I have no interest in or whatever.
That sounds so horrible. They're just,
I know, but this is reality.
I know, for most people probably.
I don't know about most.
A lot.
A lot of people. Divorce rates don't look good. We know that. And those studies are always interesting because those are just the people that let you know. Mm-hmm. So you have no idea, you know, or those are the people, I'm sorry, that go through the divorce.
Right.
But you have no idea of all the people that just stick with it, hating life. And they ought to get divorced, but they won't for whatever reasons, right, religious, social,
children,
just whatever the case is. So they just stay in the marriage. So, you know, I'm talking to this guy and I'm like, yeah, like it can be great, but you really have to build that shit from the ground up. Like you really have to sculpt your own marble, you know, and when I say that, you know what that means. You don't, or you figure it out if you get with someone. But a lot of the formulation around it, a lot of the ideas is what James Sexton had talked about on the podcast, which is just interesting. And I've been thinking about this for a while as our relationship has gotten better. I've just thought about attention, right? Because clearly that's all I've been thinking about. Like, this is my only purpose. This is my only drive, is finding better ways to give attention, seeing as how, from my understanding, attention is all that we have. And fundamentally speaking, your attention is your baseline. It's what it is that you are able to see. Now, most people are not in the endeavor of trying to augment their noticings per second, right? Their frames per second, as I speak about it, their moments per minute, whatever you want to talk about. Like the amount of things that you are able to observe and take note of prior to thoughts sweeping you away and you just being lost in thought about something and having to snap back into the immediate reality that you are, inhabiting. And so this idea that the old ball and chain, right? The idea, you may not know that.
I've heard of it.
It's an American phrase.
Yeah.
Right. I think, but it's pretty much just, think about what a ball and chain is. It's like a slavery type of term where you would be chained to a very large ball where you can't go anywhere. Right. And we just have this overarching sort of idea that a man and wife or whatever, you know what I mean? Listen, there's a lot of man and man, woman and woman.
Person and a person.
Yeah, person and person. I don't want to offend anyone. Person and person. All of them.
Zizai.
Everybody. Is you having to just sort of tolerate them and like you're rolling your eyes at the things they do. It's like, oh, he's so lazy or doesn't pay attention to me, but I love him because he does this and this and this. Or, the woman that just like, oh, she's then the little nagging woman, the nagging wife is just nagging me about this, that, and the third, nagging me about my health and nagging me about my cleanliness, my hygiene, nagging me about things around the house, nagging me about my feelings, blah, blah, blah. And it's like this overarching, this looming, ever impending idea that we flavor things with as a culture.
Yeah.
And, it's more, I guess, prevalent in certain people's lives than it is others. But there is this overall blanketing idea, and people will know what it is I'm talking about when I say it. Like they'll be like, oh yeah, like I get that idea, whether they practice it or not. But that in culture is weird. I thought about myself growing up. There was this thing, I don't know if all guys did it, but I definitely know young black guys were most certainly not encouraged to love a woman, right? That was not a case. We're not growing up in the era of Marvin Gaye or Luther Vandross or any of that sort of shit. We're growing up with 50 Cent, The Weeknd, and whomever else. Okay, so like it changes. The culture changes through, as I said before, like leaders or seeming leaders, the people that we look up to. It just so happens often that we're looking up to they're just humans.
Right.
They're just regular humans. But a lot of times we are looking up to the wrong people, and that's up to people's interpretation. Like, what is the wrong person? Like, why would you say this the wrong person? And what makes it the wrong person versus the right person to look up to? And that's a discussion over morals and ethics and values that moral philosophers have been having forever. Yeah, right. So I guess you got to go listen to moral philosophers and figure out like what your philosophy on ethics and morals and values are, and then go out there.
Yeah.
But there are certain people that just most certainly just aren't the right people, or at least what you could do, which I feel like is hard for people, is just grab eclectically.
Yes.
Grab from various things and be like, you know what? This person or this image is good for this host of reasons, but not these other ones. So I'm not going to take everything from them. And people are very bad about not taking things wholesale, right? They're not very good at it. So yeah, I think that it goes through like that. I remember us as kids, well, and when I say kids, we teenagers, young 20s, we're making fun of each other. And this was a phrase, right? A guy would start dating a girl, and at some point in time, our friends were like, we know for whatever reason, because you don't just come back and say, hey, I'm dating someone. So that's what, a lot of women would do. Like, they're proud of it. Like, oh, I'm dating a new guy. Like, this is what's going on. Guys weren't really doing that. Like, you just found out somehow. Like, hey, man, where you going tonight? What? You been going out? What? You got something good? I mean, yeah, like I got a little, I got a little shorty with her. Like, nigga, what's going on? Oh, shit. Ain't nothing to see, Met her at a party, blah, blah, blah. Like, it just came about that way. It wasn't like some huge announcement. But then at some point in time, your friends were going to come at you and they were going to fuck with you. And they're going to be like, yo, watch this. And then they go to you and be like, you like her? You like her?
Oh my god!
And that
you have feelings for her.
Yeah,
you care about her well-being.
Yeah, like you like her, nigga. You like her.
You don't want her to die.
Now that was a huge punchline because it would hurt a motherfucker to be like, yeah, like I like her.
The fuck her.
But that's the thing. It's like it's that bred toxicity.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It was very, very weird to like someone and to have their well-being at the forefront of your mind and blah, blah, blah. And the issue with that is that goes into a lot of people's adulthood. Like, that's not just a childish thing. Like, it follows people through their adolescence into adulthood. And that's when you start to see the toxicity that you can see if you decide to open up your social media apps, your preferred social media apps, and just looking at what people have to say about other demographics. And that's interesting, right? That there's some innate tribal nature of us that just makes us look at other people as others for whatever differences they have, and not all the similarities that human beings have. And in othering them, putting them in a different camp, and then disliking them for whatever groupthink reasons.
Right.
So that's why I suppose it's so beautiful and overall just bizarrely fascinating when you see people that really bucked that system and was like, listen, I don't know what y'all are doing, but we're going to try to love each other as best as possible and try to support each other and try to remove our egos from any contentious situation so we can see exactly what is going on, so we can move forward amicably, because that is a pure intention that we try our best to uphold. And that just brings a world of difference when you're on a team with someone, when you're a partner with someone.
That always reminds me of growing up. And if you've listened to me talking off on here when I pop in, I grew up in a very strict Baptist Christian household for a really, really long time. And I only ever saw my dad make any sort of decision, whether it was me going to homecoming or painting my nails for the first time. I used to get beat for painting my nails until I was like 12. Whatever it was,
and you were taking the beatings. How many times did you get beat?
I got beat all the time because
you just kept doing that shit.
Because Earl, I remember like crying as my father would beat me, and I'm like, what is so wrong about me painting my nails coral pink? I'm like, what is it? I'm like, I remember saying, I was like, it's not in the Bible. So like, God doesn't dislike this. Like, why do you hate it? And why do you hit me when I don't follow the rules that you have set forth?
Yeah, because, I mean, listen, it's just, I'm responding the way I am right now because you said coral pink. And it just happens to be that on that spectrum of Roy G. Biv, like those,
I haven't heard that in a long time.
Those are the colors that like men are attracted to, which is why you have like the classic pink is for women, right? Even though it's right, but the classic pink is for women, and in shades of red are seductive.
Right.
Right? Like you have the ooh, and you wear the red heels. What do other women say to you?
And that's, mind you, I chose that coral pink because that was the most, like the closest thing to white I could find. Mm-hmm. I would have never painted my nails red because I knew that would have thrown him over the edge. And I didn't know psychologically why back then, but I just knew that I couldn't choose that color.
Yeah, it's rouge.
Yeah, right.
You know, like blush on faces.
It's just too much.
Red lipstick, pink lipsticks, like all that sort of stuff. It has just been, you know, for whatever reasons, is because I don't know them evolutionarily, has called to men.
Yeah, I think Jordan
maybe it's just like maybe it's like ripe. Maybe that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Like this is ripe.
Yeah, there's something like about red.
Like this is youthful. Mm-hmm. This is vibrant.
It's very interesting how we're biologically just sewn together like this. Mm-hmm. But I say all that to say that I remember looking at my mom every single time, and I have said this to her growing up. And I remember thinking it every time. I was like, how come you get to make zero of these decisions? Like, it's not that you guys talk about it and then, like, my dad's position on whatever the matter is makes the most sense. Is that it's always like, it's up to your dad. You got to ask your father. Or, like, she would tell me, like, hey, like, I have no problems with that, but he doesn't really, like, he's not about it. So, like, you can't go to homecoming for whatever reason. Mm. Like, I don't even remember the reasonings why. But I was always getting into trouble since I've been getting my ass handed to me since I was probably 2, because there would be these rules set forth and I couldn't understand them. I'm like, if it's not in the Bible, which was where everything revolved around in my life, I'm like, so why can't I do it? Like, why can't we do it? Yeah, and there was never an explanation as to why this other person didn't want me to do it. It was just because I said so, and you cannot tell me that. Yeah. That has never been good enough for me. So it makes me feel phenomenal to be in a relationship that very much feels like a partnership, you know, and especially as we grow older together, because I had never seen that. You know, I grew up with abusive grandparents, and there was certainly I've only ever seen hierarchies in my life, and men being at the top of them, you know, and thankfully I never adopted that mentality either, you know, that men are just out here trying to ruin the world and be in charge of the world, and women and whatever else is mixed up in that. But I think that's, for the most part, like, that's a lot of people's lives in some way. You know, like, there's not a lot of partnership. Like, there's not a lot of conversation. Someone is in charge for some reason, whether it's, you know, religious or financial or whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's when I broke down the word conversación. Like, I love that one. You know, to see with, the act of seeing with, the act of conversation. Seeing, and because I'd never heard anyone speak of it that way. But like my just basic understanding of Spanish and being able to put that back together made so much sense to me. What the truest form of conversation is. And like, there are other types, but it doesn't hit home like that type. Like, truly trying to employ all of the factors that allow for both people to see together. And a lot of that is, as I've spoken about, ego dissolution, and honesty, attention, focus, listening, you know, understanding of yourself and where you're coming from, precision in your speech, all that sort of stuff. The green lights, I had called them before.
Yeah, right.
That's definitely a huge piece that is missing from that. And I think that that's often going on. That is often what I think about. Well, like, when you hear from people, as we've talked about, with this Live to 100 book that we've gotten, as well as the dietary book for recipes.
And the challenge book, if anyone wants
it. And the challenge book that they have, as well as just the overall documentary, the docuseries. A lot of the couple of people that we have given that information to initially have this feeling of, man, that's really great for them, but we can't do that here because we live within these set of circumstances. culturally speaking. And that is, I definitely take that into account, because a lot of the reason that people are in the problems that they're in are not their fault.
Right.
Right? As you say, it's not their fault, but they are responsible.
If you see it and you're aware of it at some point, then you're responsible.
So the point being, you're right. You're not set up in the right set of circumstances to not be an addicted consumer, right? Because that is a lot of what we have here in the States. You're not positioned well to not be, an addicted and underdeveloped, unknowledgeable eater in the consumer way, right? Like, diet is terrible. As I've talked to you before about driving home late at night, and then now there's Taco Bell, there's Burger King, there's McDonald's, there's blah 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 blah,
open,
right? And it's all very cheap. So in a lot of ways, you're not set up, right? Schooling is weird because there are a lot of things in school that I feel like a lot of people wish there were other things set inside the curriculum, like communications classes, like learning how to plot and build land yourself, like agriculture, mindfulness, meditation,
money management
for sure.
Emotional regulation.
That would be a part of the certain meditation practices, but all of those things. So I always ask myself I don't ask myself, but when people speak to you, you have a pretty firm understanding of the conversations that they have and that they have had. Literally, the things that come out of people's mouths when they talk to you are some form, fashion, the degree to which they have had conversations about things.
Right.
So you get a decent understanding, you get a decent reading on what the baseline conversation out there is like. And like I told those two people that we spoke to about Live to 100, about these blue zones where centenarians are thriving around the world, you can make an enclave. Like, enclaves exist, countries within countries.
Yeah.
And so you can make that. You can make that your home. You can come back to a place every night where you're not trying to take the longest route to get home because you don't want to fucking see that person.
Not trying to hide in the bathroom for 45 minutes.
No, you don't want to do that. You don't want to get a hernia taking a shit for 30 minutes, right? Drink some water, by the way, if you're going through that. Your body needs water to flush things out. And some people may not know that. So the whole point there is that attention is your world. What you give your attention to, you know about those things. And the things that you don't really know about those things. And those things are going to be finite because you are not an omniscient being. Right? So the whole thing is just, what do you want to give that attention to whilst you're here? You have time and you have attention. Right? There's energy that goes into being able to give certain amounts of attention over the course of that amount of time you have on this planet. So you can say you have your energy, attention, and time. So the very, very most basic fundamental question a human can ask themselves, from my purview, is how much of my energy do I want to spend paying attention to the various things that I could give my attention to over the course of my life here?
Yeah.
And so you ask yourself that question, and then you slowly start trying to plot that out and ask yourself the questions as to why certain things, deserve certain attention over others. And you start to build a system of values, and, hopefully your things that make you feel good are in there, like your hobbies, music, whatever, the arts that make you feel good, or, incite some sort of creativity and inspiration for life, like good, like real, like juicy content, whatever that is for you. Your health, physical, mental, spiritual, if you're about that, whatever that means for you, religious. the community that you're a part of, your level of security, these types of things, learning, growing, whatever. And as I've spoken about on a couple of the last episodes, these things require so much of your attention.
Almost all of it.
To be good at them, not to be mediocre. Like if you want to be good at all of these things that I'm speaking about, the way in which you treat yourself, treat other people, the way that you're treating and maintaining your body, your vessel, your vehicle that is going to take you through this life. And if you're thinking about the long term, like not wanting your body to start breaking down and malfunctioning earlier, and trying to live a fuller life, trying to spend your time getting into that juicy material, the things that really like arrest your attention. Like it's very easy to give your attention to this because it's so compelling for whatever reason. And also realizing, because sometimes the compelling stuff is also a lot of the trash. So trying to discern between like, what am I getting from this? Am I getting anything from this? Do I want to get something? Like, what does it say that I don't want to get something? What does it say that I'm looking for something out of this? But, everyone has to go through this inventory and come out with their own list of things. But the conversations that people are having are huge. That you brought up children. A lot of people want to wait. They say, oh, they're not at that age yet. I'll wait to have a conversation with Junior at some other point in time. But we underestimate how intelligent children are and what their capacity for learning things are, which is way, more vast than ours as adults. And they speak on that in that book, in this book as well, Drunk. It's just way better. They're just way more malleable. They're just,
for sure. They can just pick up and let go, and it's like, all right, this one now, yeah.
It's not attached. The way they talked about it is the best. Is that your brain, is made up of all this type of matter, and that gray matter is sort of that very creative, free flowing. You can get wildly, imaginative in here and find new pathways and new ways of thinking about things. Then there's white matter, which is the more concise problem solving matter, which allows us to go through life and not get killed. It allows us to survive and understand things. And they talk about it like it's a huge field, a vast field of like wheat growing, right? But you have to figure out how to get from point A to point B to C and D and E and all these different ideas, right? Innumerable amount of variations between these plot points. And every time you take a route somewhere, you have now taken a route somewhere. So you understand that route, just like you going to work. You probably understand 2 ways to get to work very, very well without any GPS, just you getting there.
For sure.
There are mad ways to get to work. Some of them may be longer than others, but there are a wild amount of ways for you to get to work. But you only know like 1 or 2. And it's because once you take a position, you're going to keep taking that way to and from work every day. And it's just like an idea in your mind. You're going to keep taking that same route unless for some reason that road's closed that day.
Yeah.
So now you're forced to take another route. And you're like, oh shit, I can take this route. Actually, this route's better. Like this is a much like more beautiful route. It's only like a minute longer. I think I'd much rather take this route. So you're forced. A lot of people are never forced to look at things from other positions. One, because they're not having open, honest discussions with people that would force that. They're not looking for information outside of their immediate wheelhouse, outside of their echo chamber that people are often trapped inside. But there are certain things like alcohol, like mushrooms, psilocybin, LSD. There are a lot of things that can get you outside of that. And it brings the gray matter back in a way where you're much more childlike in your mind, where you can play around with ideas and think about things in ways that you just otherwise wouldn't have before. And, I think it's extremely important when a child is a child, to start to build that understanding, allow them to be creative, and also asking them pertinent questions about things and having them, work through ideas. I've also come to my parents and told them later on in life the same thing that you just said. I gave them the same case. Like, when I was getting older, I was also running into the same problem. I was a kid and there were things I wanted to do, and I was told I couldn't do certain things, but I wasn't given a lot of reasons for a lot of things. And so I just decided I was going to do other things that I wanted to. And a lot of the times, the only issue that I ever had was coming home and getting beat. Like, there weren't a ton of other ramifications for the small things that I wanted to do, like spend the night at my friend's house. Like, nothing. I was in a safe place. Right. They knew those people. Nothing was going to come up. They just wanted me to come home. Right. So any disruption there may have been emotional for them. Maybe they just wanted me to be home. Maybe they just felt like I haven't been producing enough or doing well enough, performing well enough in school, whatever, to have but I was out though. They would let me go out because clearly I'm already at my friend's house. I'm already there. I'm calling from my friend's house. Say, hey, can I stay? He's like, no, come home. And that particular time I'm speaking about, I was like, okay. And I hung up the phone and I didn't go anywhere. I just stayed there.
Seriously?
Yeah. He absolutely pulled up to the house like an hour later and then, like RJ's mom was like, hey, he's outside. Like he's, I thought you said you could stay. I pulled one of those where I was just like, yeah, he said I can stay. He didn't. So then she was like, yeah, he's outside waiting for you. And I got in that car and yeah.
Eugene got you.
Oh yeah.
Eugene got you.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're on the road, when you're getting your ass whooped as the car is moving, as you,
oh my God,
getting your ass whooped,
getting that hand from the back,
getting your ass whooped in transit is crazy. No. It ain't no in the back. I'm sitting next to him, so he's just got a clear line of fire. Right in transit is crazy.
Honestly, can we just take a pause to talk about
how dangerous it is to whoop someone's ass while you operating heavy machinery at 30 miles per hour?
It is that we got whooped the way that we got whooped. Like, I have vivid images. I used to have welts on the back of my knees constantly because I would run away because my dad had his leather belt.
Yeah.
Like,
you said it to the degree, and I think that both of us feel this.
What
is like when you just pull a belt off of the wardrobe, off the dresser, just to put, and you just hear like clink, like you hear the little belt, the buckle, hit against that little latch that goes in the hole. When you just hear that little jingle. It's not like you're afraid. It's not like you get afraid, but there's. I
feel it in my heart. Something's not right. Like, it doesn't.
The only identification, right? Like, the only reference point to that is not just simply someone putting a belt on. It's a belt being taken off or a belt being grabbed from somewhere for for ass whipping purposes.
It's crazy. Yeah.
You just hear the jingle. You're like, oh shit. A belt coming out, for some people that's not the case because it wasn't a belt. It was like some people just got random items. Some people it was like they pick up a shoe.
I got the chancleta too.
Yeah, you got the chancleta.
I got the chancleta.
Some people get shoes thrown at them. People bare hand.
But the belt was
people grew up with switches. You know what switch is?
Is that a stick?
Yeah, it means sometimes people would make you go pick the switch that you're going to get beat on. I mean, you have to go outside and take a strand of bark off the tree, like a twig, and they are going to makeshift a whip out of that and whip you with it. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. These were slave tactics. They would like learn through time that this is kind of like what you did to someone that was not being,
Yeah, it always amazes me that for some reason so many people in our generation were just able to come together and realize maybe we should stop with the leather belts and the hands to the face and just pretty much all corporal punishment, if not just at least.
I don't know the numbers, so I'm not gonna jump on that boat.
Okay.
I don't know. I see what you're saying, that you would like to believe that most people in like
maybe not
first world countries, maybe, or I mean, I don't even know what demographic you're setting this inside, actually.
Well, I just think people in I think like their 40s and 30s and 20s that are having children now are more so starting to think about what it means for me to do this, in how, like, do I want to do it, versus our parents that are in their like late 50s, 60s and 70s who like that was the only option. That's what you do.
Yeah.
If they're acting up, it's not like, like we have beat him 5 times this week, so maybe like it's not working or whatever it else. It's like, no, every time you do it, this is what happens.
Yeah.
Versus maybe a pause being had or a conversation being had or maybe taking it out altogether. I think that's way more prevalent now than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Mental health is, is much more of a conversation now. So we're much more sensitive to other people. And things like that, like therapy, like all these conversations have definitely made a dent for sure.
True.
And in the culture. And it definitely is wild. Like, people were just getting ass for a very, very long time. And a lot of it was learned behavior, of course, from the elder generations.
I don't know about you, but from my case, every time I think about my parents and them beating me, I only ever think about what their upbringing must have really looked like. Like, truly. Like, I used to be really upset about it before. That almost never comes up. It makes me feel uncomfortable to, like, see images of my parents absolutely attacking me in certain ways, because that's what happened.
Why does it make you feel upset or uncomfortable? Because
I see them so vividly.
I understand, but what is it about the image that makes you feel uncomfortable?
Because I try to put myself in that situation, and it like almost makes me emotional to think of like beating my own kid. I was like, wow, I could never do that. So it just makes me think of what they must have grown up with, which is, it's probably like unspeakable. My parents come from extremely abusive, alcohol driven. Both of my grandfathers were alcoholics who beat both of my grandmothers, who were essentially prisoners in their own home. Neither of them got their license. They weren't allowed to go to school by their husbands. My grandma, rebelled, and she wore jeans for the first time like 30 years into her marriage with my grandfather right before he died from pancreatic cancer from drinking. So
wore jeans for the first time.
He wouldn't let her.
He didn't like that denim.
No, only skirts. And she said,
"That's what?
It's
what?
She wasn't
what sort of ass back? Well, no, that's not true, because the skirts were probably them sock hop sort of skirts, like they were long skirts.
Yeah. Up to here, she wasn't allowed to do anything unless he approved.
But I guess the jeans would be much more form fitting than
she wasn't allowed to wear pants,
like a billowing skirt.
Only skirts, and then she started wearing jeans, and then she got a job. So just things like that. But I think the older I get, I realize how insanely abusive my parents were when it came to corporal punishment. It was pretty bad, but they could never see it that way. It's just a thing that you did. Yeah. When I grew up with welts on my body from getting beat because I wore the wrong socks or whatever it may be. But it just, like, I can't connect whatever it is that you're supposed to connect that allows you to grab a belt and then hit your offspring because they were being a kid.
Yeah, that just means that you have more options.
Yes, for sure.
That's what that means.
Yeah, but it's an interesting thing, at least for me, to not be able, like, I understand where they were coming from, but that is, like, there's, like, I can't, like, there would be no situation ever in the world where my kid would just get beat with a belt.
Or you just have to wail on them.
Yeah, like, never.
Because you have no other recourse to, like...
Nothing. Because if you do something as bad as it calling for corporal punishment, like, you'd probably be in jail. Like, I would call the cops.
Yeah, I think we, like I said, we underestimate our children, and we don't think that they would understand certain things. But I've seen extremely precocious children. I've seen children understand things if you take the time.
I think most kids could be precocious if they were spoken to like they should be, which is not a babbling 2-year-old.
Yeah,
you know, I think you could build them up to be. Yeah, just a bit more stellar than just a regular kid.
When I told my parents that case, that things weren't...
Which one?
The only case that we're making here, which is that you are not speaking to me about the reasoning behind things. And I've felt that, you know, sometimes it's easier like to give your younger self positive attributes because you don't remember who you were as a kid. Like you think, I had to be some version of who I am now.
Yeah.
I really look back, and with all the honesty, I feel like I've been a pretty reasonable person. That doesn't mean that I always made the right decisions, but I've always been interested in having conversations with people, spending time around people. But I've been fairly reasonable my whole life. Like if you talk to me and you said some things that made some decent sense, like it doesn't mean I have to now adopt that thing, but I could see it. And there was just, I remember looking back, like it just wasn't a thing. And so where you come from, this is definitely a trope in a lot of Black households, which is like, you do it because I say so. Yeah. Like I pay the bills in this house, so I make the rules in this house. Yep. And I also, what comes with paying the bills is that I don't have to explain those rules. They're just rules for rules' sake. Yeah. You know, for you to be compliant for whatever situation. And that's not a good way of building those, any logicians. It's no way of building any logical, formulation in anyone's mind. You only feel oppression. And I think that is what causes a lot of the feeling that your parents are trying to, like, how many times have we heard, like, in a movie or some shit like that, when a young one is screaming at their parent, like, you just want to ruin my life. Like, you just don't. But a lot of the times it's because there's no understanding there. Like, you're just telling me, no, I can't do this thing. And it's because you know what's best, and that's it. And then that's that. I now have much more compassion for all of those parents that do that. For sure. Because I know what it takes to be able to explain something. And it's a lot. Yeah. This goes back to being a teacher, because the first teacher are your guides in life, right? Your parents, your guardians. And everyone is not fit to be a teacher. No. So we're just bringing people into this world.
And that's the problem.
We don't got an understanding of what we doing or why we feel the way we're feeling, but we're going to bring them in, and we're just, I don't know, we're just going to wing it. We're just going to wing it. I may end up beating you because I'm upset. This is sort of like the trainer that told you about peptides but couldn't explain it may have beat the shit out of you if they had free reign to do that and they felt like it, but they don't, because it's a business setting, and then you're an adult and they're an adult. And so that in no world would that really happen. But in the degree of raising a child, how many times is the child raising questions or raising feelings, evoking feelings inside of the parents that the parents don't understand? Mm-hmm. And so now their recourse is retaliation. Like they retaliate in a way that is not cool, calm, collected, calculated, through speaking, through articulating words and ideas to their young one. So they retaliate, just very impulsively, and they do this thing and they feel bad about it later. They buy you ice cream or whatever the case is, and they take you on a shopping spree. Mm-hmm. But that's all they have. They don't know they don't think about things on a fabric level, right? On a thread, on a granular molecular level, and they don't understand how they feel about something or why you truly shouldn't be doing this, or what it is they're trying to do when they make a new rule. Like, without that understanding, you only feel oppression from them. That's it. You just feel like you're just in this house and you're like, what the fuck is going on? I'm living this weird existence while I'm in this place with these people, and they get to rule everything I do, but I don't know why they're doing it. Like it's a very weird existence.
I don't know if it's the shrooms that we've done over the years and everything else altogether, and it's probably everything. But listening to you say all of this, whilst also acknowledging that I've never had children and I don't know what that feels like, 100% I acknowledge that is something that I cannot get in tune with at the moment. It just sounds to me so mind-blowingly irresponsible to have children and to raise them in such a way. Like they are not, like the world doesn't really revolve around them. Like it should be like it's your world and I'm living in it because I decided you should come be born and live with me.
Well, that was what was going on in Outwitting the Devil when Napoleon Hill spoke about parents. It's like, listen, the game is fucked up.
Yeah.
And this was him speaking very early on about a formulation problem.
That was when? That was
like 1920s, 1914, right? Something like that.
Like
it was
early 1900s. Yeah.
And he's like calling out this. That's why that book was so crazy. Because
he must have.
Because everything that he spoke about, education, child rearing, like everything can so easily be mapped onto what is going on right now. That's when you know.
Damn it, I think I gave that book away.
That's when you know some people. No, because we have two. There's another one. When it can be mapped on throughout ages and ages, that's just wisdom.
Yeah.
That's just wisdom. Yeah. Like you can talk about something in 1900 and in 2023 it applies and you should read it. Like that's wisdom, right? Yeah. That's a lot of what that is, man.
Yeah. No, it's so beautiful. Like I told you yesterday, my coworker brought her little 2-year-old into work, and it's just amazing to me. All I ever want to do is like observe the babies and like just follow them around and see what they're into, you know, and just what the world must look like when you're 2, you know, and just how everyone in the space that we were sharing just like knows that it's this baby's world right now. Like we're all going to cater to him and we're going to follow him around and ask him questions. And if he wants to be left alone, then that's what we're going to do. And if he wants to play with us, then that's what we're going to do. You know, it's so interesting to make living things and not cater to them in the most proper, healthy ways, you know, because it's not to say that your baby leads the way that your life should go. It's a funky one, but
it's time. I give a very charitable outlook on all these parents.
Yeah.
Because as I go down to the bare minimum, I always go down to the fundamentals: time, attention, effort, or energy. Our parents were too busy getting their ass whooped, right? Having to live around a bunch of alcoholics or whatever the case is, people that were, you know, emotionally not super intelligent
or just unavailable fully, whatever,
and having to try to make a way in this world in a way that we don't know, right? Our parents are working far harder than we are,
100%,
and that's just a fact.
100%,
that's just a fact, and that took a lot of time, right? And it's a lot of time that you don't get to sit down and meditate. And a lot of time you don't get to sit and just read through books leisurely.
A lot of money you don't get to save.
Like, I think about the life that we live. It's so wildly fortunate. And so when I speak about gratitude, it's hard to tell other people to be grateful for things, you know, because you get the immediate resistance of you don't know my life, you don't know other people's lives, you don't know what people need to be grateful for. That's fine. I'm done speaking from that perspective. I'm just speaking about me. When I was reading Circe, right?
Love that book.
Yeah. And they were just speaking about this Greek mythology. They're just speaking about these gods up in Mount Olympus, hanging out, just eating grapes and drinking wine perpetually because they can't really get drunk out of their mind and get crazy. Like they can't die. They're gods. They're having a great time. They're just having sex.
Beautiful,
and they're all beautiful and they're laughing and they're just
abundance.
All exhibiting all of their powers that they all individually hold. And it's just great life for them. But it's so leisure. Everything that they do is like there's no job, not really.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you're God. So yeah, like maybe you're the god of love, or you're the god of war. So like you go and you decimate a land because you can just throw a spear down and kill everyone, or you just go make people fall in love. But that's just fun for you, going around and exhibiting your godly given talents, right? Your powers. And we are on that scale. Everyone is on that scale. The things that you must do for survival versus leisure. The idea that we have time to sit and record podcasts
whenever,
like the fact that we just have the time, the money, the equipment to sit around and just talk, is crazy. When you look at time. Because most people in time have been trying to figure out how to get away from predators.
Right.
How to avoid death from other impending tribes of human beings.
How to conserve food. How to generate heat.
Just all the basics to what it is to survive things. How to innovate to make things just a little bit better than they were the time before, right? And some people would say, well, oh, that's just what we're doing now. Yeah, but we're in a time of excess now. We're in a time where this has never occurred in human history whatsoever. We're living in a completely different way than any human has ever, that we know of, right? Because people talk about ancient civilizations that may have been where we are or beyond where we are.
Isn't that amazing?
Right? That we just don't know about because they were wiped out from asteroids or ice ages or whatever in the past.
That's so beautiful.
Just natural history.
That idea in its own.
It's insane. Like we have no idea. But it's a wild way of being, and we just have so much time to just read books and record podcasts, listen to podcasts, and go out with friends. When we would watch Downton Abbey, and we would just look at the rich, and it's on all those sort of 17th, 18th century books that I read, all those classics, The Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, Daniel Deronda by George Eliot, or Marianne Evans, we should say, right? All of those, the Dostoevsky novels, the Wuthering Heights, or not the Wuthering Heights. What was the other one that I read that had Pip in it? Great Expectations.
Great Expectations, right? There's a movie about that, I think, on Netflix. I've been meaning to watch it with you.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a bit older, but I'd love to watch it.
I'll definitely watch that.
I think that's better that it's older.
But in all of these things, you always had the extremely wealthy somewhere in the book. Like you were going to be around some extremely, extremely wealthy people. Middlemarch was another one. But you would always just see these people and you would just ask yourself, like, what are they doing? All of the scenes are just people going over to tea parties and just like talking about the talks of the town. And like, that's mostly what women were doing. They were going to school to learn how to be the most impressive, sort of like a geisha, right? In Japan, like learning how to sew and how to dance and how to sing and how to cook and clean and how, perfect etiquette. They were learning how to be the best wives possible, like the best partners, wives really possible. And then they were just leisure, just hanging out, and then you had the men doing some work, bringing home money. But just looking at those visions of people just hanging out, and it's like, but they still had their issues, right? They would have them going off and crying, and it seemed all very telenovela-ish. It all seemed very soap opera. But it seemed so leisure. And what a lot of us don't understand is that we are living the same life.
Oh, 100%.
Like a lot of the jobs that people house, they're not, it's not grueling work. And we spend so much time in pockets where you can easily look into the future and think of a time when you're going to be sick or be on your deathbed or be just dealing with something horrific and just envision wishing that you were back in a moment where you felt like things sucked or it was boring or whatever. And you just know that, which means that you're living a beautiful life right now, 100%. But there is something that is clouding you from being able to see it. And it seems to be this idea of looking forward.
Yes,
this idea of looking forward and looking backwards. Like, what happened in the past? Like, why did I do this thing? Why did I say this thing?
Or why didn't
things
happen?
Could have been like this. Things should, and that word is so loaded because you don't know what should be, right? Like, what is what is. We know that, right? So maybe we should just work off of that programming. But and then you're looking forward, like, the next thing is going to bring me happiness. Like the next raise, the next promotion, the next raise, next vacation. It could just be the next moment. Like, I'm at work right now, but like once I get home, I'm gonna have dinner. Like that'll be cool. Like once I get home, but like it's this constant thinking that the next thing or moment's going to bring you happiness. Yeah. When you hear philosophers speak about this, it's fascinating to have this understanding unlocked in your mind. That as soon as you get to whatever point it is that you think, I need this trophy, I need this next raise is going to make me, now I'm going to make $100,000. I'm going to make $150,000 a year. I'm going to make whatever. As soon as you do that, that moment is gone. Like the very nature of a moment is for it to be gone.
Right.
It is naturally ephemeral. It is naturally fleeting. So as soon as you get there, it's gone. It's already a memory. So if you're working on that software, then the only natural thing to do after you've achieved that is like, oh, well, what's the next thing that's supposed to bring me happiness? And you're perpetually
non-stop
looking for the next thing, as opposed to finding practices that root you in the moment and knowing that ultimately the moment that you're sharing right now is just that moment, in that moment within itself. That power of now that I think Eckhart Tolle has spoken about. I believe that's his book. And my aunt spoke to me about that when I was very young, like 19 or 20, something like that. Just that very understanding that the power is here, that the wealth of life is found in every moment if you lock into it. But you have to create practices that allow you to notice what is actually happening in the moment, and that if you knew anything about war or famine and you truly lived inside of that terror for a day, you would immediately know, oh my gosh, this isn't happening to me every day. Like I'm not going through this. People are not dropping bombs on me right now.
Everywhere, all the time.
There's food all the time, everywhere around me.
I can take a shower whenever, in any temperature that I would like.
There are people around me that do care for me. There's opportunities around. I'm not dealing with constant debilitating pain every day. And maybe you are, and there are other things that you have to, look at in your life. But it's other things that for you to look at in your life to present to you the beauty of it is what I'm saying. Like, even if you have some of these issues going on, there are still people within those that find a way, which is what was remarkable about the book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. One of the most transformative books I'd ever read, because it was about a psychiatrist, I believe, or a psychologist, one of those, inside of a Nazi death camp.
Wow. Right.
And clearly he had survived it, and he wrote a book about that account of time in a historical sense, in an experiential sense, in a neurological sense. Like, he spoke about it all, sort of the way that Michael Pollan had divvied up his, How to Change Your Mind book about psychedelics into 3 different parts. But he spoke about it in such an eloquent way, and spoke about the way that human beings will adapt. You can find ways of experiencing meaning in what you think are just the most dire and just dreadful of situations. And if he and other people can do that in a death camp where people are being marched into gas chambers and shot and killed in various ways, then how can we not do that here in America, in the States? Like, we're dealing with so much tragedy because of our mental states just lingering around. And, Stoicism and Marcus Aurelius would say that the quality of your life is based upon the quality of your thoughts. Some people feel like that's a bunch of bullshit. Another thing that I'll take out of this book in front of me drunk is that they speak about magic. And there was a guy named Arthur C. Clarke. I think he was a writer or something like that. He was some prolific person that had stated that any advanced form of technology is going to seem like magic to the non-initiated.
Right.
Which was beautifully put. Because that means, because it's not just like technology in the sense of like techware that we think of.
Advancements.
It's any form of advancement that people are truly advanced inside of. Mm-hmm. That's going to seem like magic to someone that has no idea mm-hmm. about it at all. Like if you go to a civilization that knows nothing, there's still some small indigenous group that has not been contacted by the outside world, about anything, and they're still just hunting and gathering and doing regular rituals and ceremonies and stuff like that, and burning their food on a fire at night, telling stories, whatever. And you bring them an iPhone, or you bring them a laptop, or they're going to be looking at it like, what is this piece of sorcery in front of me? What is this person? They might want to kill you. They don't know what it is. They may be so fearful. They have no idea. They can't even conceptualize it. And what's great is that idea kind of spills out into everything in life. And so there are ideas about our way of living that sound like magic. Mm-hmm. Even as I speak about them, I know that if you don't understand something and you have an initial reaction of like resistance towards it for whatever reason, and it could be just because you're fearful of what this person's talking about, you're just not going to understand it at that time. Maybe it's just not your time. But when Sam Harris, lifelong, you can say that kind this time, lifelong meditator, neuroscientist,
modern day philosopher,
moral philosopher, when he talks about waking up, that's a fascinating analogy. That you go to sleep at night, and when you go to sleep, you have a firm understanding where you are, like what bed you're in, who's around you, all that sort of stuff. But then if you slip into a dream, you go into a dream, and for most people that are not lucid dreaming, there's no continuity between the life you were just living when you got in the bed and this life you're now living, where you're a pirate on a boat in the middle of the ocean fighting a kraken, so that you can get back to grandma's house for dinner on time. Right. Like that, like you don't even bat an eye at it. You're just like a pirate, and you got to figure that shit out. You're just in your dream. And then when you wake up, there's no surprise. You may remember it, you may not, but there's no surprise that you were just a pirate on a ship. But then you wake up in a regular life. But you know that in both aspects, you were you. Like, you didn't change. Mm-hmm. You were you the whole time. And so when I speak about this idea of waking up to life and getting your noticings per seconds up, your noticing per seconds up, your frames per second, your moments per second up, and augmenting the rate at which you are observing life around you and integrating with that, it is like waking up.
Yeah.
And so for people that don't understand that idea at all, and it sounds like witchcraft, is because you've never been at a point in your life where a door has opened up and you're like, this wavelength was not available to me before.
I was not privy to this.
I was not seeing life in this robust nature before. I was not seeing the detail to things before. I was not paying attention to a lot of things before. And the world has opened up in a way and shown itself to me in a way that I had no idea I was missing before. It's like being able to go from just regular vision to now being able to flip a switch and see X-ray vision as well. Or flip another switch and see like infrared as well, or night vision as well. It's like just being able to switch and see a completely different frequency of life that before was just not accessible.
I think that's too advanced. I think it's more so like you've had really bad vision your whole life, but then you had no idea you had bad vision. I don't think it was regular vision. I think that you just weren't really seeing things, and everything was just like shapes and shadows. And then you get prescription glasses that you didn't know that you needed. And it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I haven't been looking at it at all. Like, to any degree, let alone infrared vision. Like there was nothing for me to see, and now I see something.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy. Yeah. And I wasn't trying to say it too much, which I haven't said it one time. But you don't know what I'm going to say?
Is it going to be something about psychedelics?
Yes, of course it is. Fran, I remembered what you said about me being the shroom spokesperson. But I think as I always say, mindfulness meditation, it's certainly a gateway to help you broaden your spectrum and to realize that your vision is quite shady and, as a matter of fact, almost non-existent. I also believe that if you are a right candidate, because I also don't believe that everyone in the world should just do psychedelics, but if you are the correct candidate, I think it broadens your heart and your horizons in a way that meditation, I don't think, can fully. And it just takes a bit longer if you're not surrounded by the correct material, people, and are practicing in the manner that you should.
Segue. This brings us into the book that you and I both read from the Reese Witherspoon book club.
Christy Tate.
Christy Tate's book on group therapy, or her experience going into a group therapy or a therapy group. In an unconventional one, right?
Very
where
so.
Most group or most therapy, it's anonymous, right? So most group therapy, alcohol is anonymous, or eating disorders or whatever the group is structured to help people with. Usually anonymous. You go in first name, first letter of last name,
right?
Dot. You don't speak to those people really outside of the group. You don't speak in group about things that are going on outside or other people in the world. You bring it back to yourself and your feelings and your accountability in whatever
and
situation.
You don't speak about the group members or whatever it is. It's literally your experience with what you're dealing with, and that's it.
Which seems to be the conventional group therapy module, module. And so she was an up-and-coming lawyer. Right now she's like an essayist and
she's a lot of things. She's a very smart woman,
which by the way wasn't noted in the book that she was doing these other things while she was. So maybe this came after.
No, I think it was after.
Yeah, this book was written. But she wrote this book about clearly having an eating disorder, having already been inside of a group for that eating disorder for a very long time. I feel
like 3 years or something.
And having what she felt like at least tamed the eating disorder into just eating these very random
7 apples for dessert.
Yeah, kind of just like weird things that she felt like didn't trigger
her overeating.
The overeating component.
Because she, I don't know if this matters, but she was bulimic, not anorexic. So she would binge eat.
Yes.
And that could be like in one sitting or throughout the day, and then purge all of that out like it was nobody's business.
Right. Clearly a lot of body image issues from the past. Always wanting to look like the thinner girl. She grew up in ballet, I think, or in dance, and she said that all the other girls were very tiny. It just calls for a tinier, like I suppose maybe in this day and age it's changing.
I don't believe so. I know a lot of ballerinas,
and they have petite.
I think it's newer, but it most certainly is not. I don't know if accepted is a word. Like you're supposed to be tall and slender and flat, sort of like a model. Like you don't see voluptuous people. You're supposed to look sort of like a model. In a sense.
Models are changing these days because there's models for a lot of different things now.
Yes.
But yeah,
like a supermodel, like
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean, like a Tyra Banks, Cindy Crawford, like they looked like a certain way in the 1980s. You know what I mean? And I think that's more so the idea. I think it's expanding, but you're supposed to be like tiny, flat. Yeah.
And so that's what she remembers is going to ballet class and her instructor being like belly in, like always constantly telling her to tuck her belly in when like she didn't have to tell the other girls because the other girls I guess didn't have a belly that was poking out. Either way, she finds that she's been in terrible relationships where it seems the other person is never truly committed to her.
Yeah.
They just kind of see her as like, this is just happening in passing. She had clear intimacy issues where she wouldn't. Again, the body image issues where she was constantly wearing a bra, like two or 2 to 3 bras because her boobs to her felt weird to have, like, and just be out there, I guess. And you
I know it sounds weird as a man, but I think I would like to say that Christy Tate, from what I have read, also sounds like she errs on the emotional instability,
yeah, and errs on the side of instability.
Yes, like not just like a regular person with regular people issues. She seems like chemically just a bit off than most people. But I definitely did. I wore 2 bras. I told you I got my puberty when I was 9. So I had B-size cups in like 5th grade. And boys are boys, and you have a lot of testosterone running around. And when you're the only girl with boobs, you don't actually like that because you're young. You know, you're not in high school wanting to show off. So I used to wear 2 bras all the time. Yeah, all the time, especially in gym class. You didn't want nothing to move. You wanted, And I remember we used to call them camis. I don't know what the actual name for them are. Those little like Aeropostale thin shirts that girls used to wear all the time. I could never wear them because I would have so much cleavage. So I would have to buy like extra large shirts, even though it was like a medium at the time, to make sure that nothing would hang out of that shirt, like that it would come up as high as possible. Yeah. So it sounds kind of crazy, and I think she's a little cray.
I don't think that it sounds crazy. It makes sense the way that you're displaying it. The same way when JP came on and talked about her, her huge knockers.
God bless her.
You know what I mean? When she spoke about it, it made sense before too. The back issues that she has, just like the level of discomfort trying to go to sleep.
I can only fathom.
And like not wanting, like she likes to lay on her stomach, but is also JP, so that's a difficult feat to achieve.
I can't even imagine.
Anywho, she'll be back soon because we're going to do our Thanksgiving, time pod that we've been doing like the last 3 years, which has just been interesting. So I'm excited to see how things are going. But so what we thought? Oh yeah, so her and this this thing that she's going through, she just had a ton of issues, just trying to have intimate relationships with other human beings. Like she never really learned how to do that and what that means. And so she seeks out this doctor, and this doctor goes about things differently. One, she realizes that this doctor she's going to see, immediately she recognizes him from the group that she was once a part of, the eating disorder group, but he was in it for something else. Like he had like a drug addiction problem.
He also had an eating disorder.
He had an eating disorder as well. Okay,
he
had
an eating disorder as well.
So, right. So she's already looking at him like, how's this eating disorder having motherfucker gonna be a therapist to me? And she's not giving the room for everyone to have some issues in something, or for people to grow out of issues, and for that maybe to be the perfect person to be in this position. But she goes along with it. He tells her exactly what it's going to be, that it's a group that people come along. It's going to be extremely honest. You have to give all of yourself to this thing, and you will build intimate relations through time. And she goes into it. And I guess the point that we're kind of getting to in all of this is that she starts in like one group, like once a week or twice a week. And then he upgrades her, and he's like, listen, I think you need to be a part of 2 groups. And then at one part, she's a part of 3 groups. And she's going to this place like 3 or 4 times a week at different points in the day. And then she scales back to 2 groups when she then graduates somehow, right? She's
from one other group. Yeah.
So now she's just in like 2 groups, but ultimately she's showing us a very vulnerable side of her. She's telling us all these things, which I applaud her for, because that's very difficult to talk about.
Absolutely.
You know, like having anal sex with so-and-so and so-and-so, or being in a relationship with this guy that as soon as you guys are about to become intimate, he just turns you over and just starts having sex with you from the back and just stuffs your face in a pillow. And like you're little aroused by it, but you're not really liking it really though.
Or the guy who also is in therapy with someone else, but is depressed and can't seem to find himself being intimate with you.
Oh, right.
But jack off in bed and then ask you if you want to join, and then you just sit there
and not join like touch him, just join just like you masturbate over there and I'll masturbate over here. Right, like being in that sort of relationship, or the one where he's married and has children and he keeps telling you, and he's also in your therapist's group, but just like on a different day, right? So you guys have the same therapist, you go to the same guy, and you guys both bring each other's news to different groups under the same therapist. So everyone in this ecosystem knows about you all's issues. It's very, very vulnerable.
And this guy had also tried to cheat with one of the guy's wives.
Yeah.
Like, so we all knew about this guy.
It was literally one of the other patients.
Oh, I thought she was the woman. Wife.
I thought, well, either way, she had spoken to that person, which made me believe it was like another patient. It could have been one of the wives, but either way, she was in communication with this other woman.
Yes.
That was going through this same deal with this same married man. I think
it was Lauren's wife.
Right. Yeah. So either way, a lot of issues, right?
For sure.
She's going in there. She's having temper tantrums. She's smashing dishes. She's bashing her head with ceramic vases. She's doing a lot. She's
ripping her hair out with her hands, and people have to stop her.
Right. Yeah. She's throwing shoes at other people in the meeting. Like she has a lot of tantrums where she just kind of just goes off. She's calling the therapist late at night, screaming at him, saying he's not doing his job.
Why can't you fix me?
I thought you were going to fix me. Yeah. You're a bullshit therapist. Blah 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 blah. Very, very interesting stuff. And again, I'm not necessarily sold on his therapy, but people can read it and figure out what they think for themselves. It is a good read, because he does give very interesting prescriptions for people to go out in the world and to do certain things that he feels like will mitigate or ameliorate whatever very unique style of suffering that they're going through. Like, before you go to bed at night, call this other patient, right, that you sit in a circle with once or twice a week. Call them and tell them what you're eating at night. Tell them how many apples you're about to eat before you go to bed, right? Because his idea, the whole underlying idea behind his therapy is you don't need an answer, right? You don't need for us or anyone to give you a solution. What you need is a witness to things. You need people to talk to that will listen to you, that will share with you, that will hear you, that will acknowledge you, that will accept you. Like you just need that. You need real intimate relationships, and it will work itself out. But you just have to give it that time, and you have to give it that effort, that attention. Boom. Now, you and I initially were reading this book, and you before me, because you get further along in the book before I do, you start to question therapy in and of itself. So would you like to speak about that?
Yeah, I guess I do speak too much, so I'm trying to give the most concise version of what I experienced reading that book. But essentially, as we spoke about, I love the idea of truth being at the forefront. Sort of utter truth. I like the fact that the group started, or is a non-anonymous group. It's like, this is who we are, and this is what's going on, and this is what we're sharing with each other. Now, as you pointed out to me, I also acknowledge that not many people get to have someone in their life that sort of feels like therapy all of the time. That conversation, that sort of environment, which is something you and I share. Now, where it gets a bit shaky for me is that it seems as though... All
right, so let's slow this down for a second so everyone can follow. Because I wanted you to speak on your initial point here. So your initial point is that...
Okay, then let's hold that. Can you hold that thought?
Bathroom break?
Yes.
All right, bathroom break.
Bathroom
break. Okay, and we're back. Okay, so this is the reason why I stopped you, because I feel like we're moving a little too fast today.
Okay.
I want you to give your initial thoughts as you're reading the book about her experience. Don't talk about how it has been revised since then.
My initial thoughts were, I love this.
Okay.
Because I had never I'm not super familiar with therapy. I tried therapy for a little bit a few years ago. It just didn't. Talking to you feels much better.
Okay, so in that you spoke to a woman on the phone or on Zoom?
On Zoom, because I wasn't.
I just want you to talk. Yes. I want you to sort of paint the picture of what that looked like, because you said you tried therapy.
Yes.
So what it looked like was you on Zoom.
On Zoom, because I wasn't allowed into the office because I was not vaccinated.
Right.
At the time, but we talked on Zoom for an hour, and she would just ask me questions. Very few of them. So it was really more so like if I came to a pod room by myself and started recording and talking, and like you would just pop in every once in a while and just like ask me about how something felt.
Yeah.
So I didn't really like that idea. I tried it for like a month, maybe 2. And yeah, it just wasn't for me. And I felt as though I was getting a lot more from psychedelics. That was the first time I did psychedelics. It was like 2 weeks after I started therapy. And it just felt like it was way more rewarding and efficient to speak to my partner and to try to meditate and to do a lot of introspective work. But upon reading this book, I was like zooming through it. I thought that this style of group therapy was very worthwhile. I think it felt innovative because I had never read about it or heard about it before. And just the premise of honesty being at the forefront of what it is that we're doing here, I thought was extremely beautiful and valuable.
And then you continued to read the book and you felt differently.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm reading the book, and I felt as though the aha moment was going to come a little bit quicker, and it feels as though it never came. Because whilst there was a lot of, like, it was centered around truth, it also felt like it was lacking, like, true accountability, in a sense. And an example that I can give of that is that 5 years into group therapy, she's still throwing tantrums and smashing plates. Because something I thought was beautiful at the beginning, I should say, is that she was able to express her rage and anger in a rageful way, which was like either cursing at Dr. Rosen or smashing something. And I thought, that's beautiful, because I've also struggled with anger and how to express that. And it was never shown to me how to do, like, how to feel it and accept it being there and sort of work through it in a healthy way, the way that meditation has shown to me. But then 5 years in, she's still smashing plates and ripping her hair out and screaming. And I felt that there was a lack of conversation being had when it came to, like, all right, I understand that whatever it is that you're going through makes you upset, even though for some reason you have gone through the same situation 17,000 times in the past 5 years, as we've read in the book. I can give space for that. But then it doesn't seem like we spoke about meditation or psychedelics was a part of the conversation in any way, shape, or form. And that it wasn't spoken about as to, like, when do we speak about the tantrums? Like, when do we stop accepting them? When do we speak about stopping the acceptance of these tantrums and what it means for a almost 35-year-old woman, 32-year-old woman, to have spent so much time in therapy 3 times a week to still feel the need to throw a tantrum because for some reason it is way too daunting to actually deal with the emotions that are at play. Because it almost feels to me like a little bit of either a cop-out or not the best method of interacting with that. So that's when I started to lose my excitement, was when the beginning of the book still felt like the end of the book. Like we hadn't made as much progress as I thought we were, which makes me, or leads me to believe that there's, quite a few flaws here. But then I started questioning therapy, like you said. And then, you helped me figure out that I definitely believe that people need these spaces for probably forever. You need...
Right, because let me cut you off for a second and try to clean this up a little bit. So Yes. So you're looking at it initially and you're just thinking, oh, this is great. Truth. Awesome. Then you continue to read and you're just like, wait a minute. She's been doing this for years. She's still throwing temper tantrums. She's still, like, this is wildly unacceptable, but she's in a space where they accept it and they encourage it. And maybe, you know, that's supposed to be some of the secret sauce. But at what point are we going to acknowledge and address the fact that that's not the way that you should be treating other people, no matter how it is that you're feeling, and trying to address that and trying to put in practice something that will help you stop doing that thing, right? Yeah. As opposed to, well, this person is a part of my group family, so therefore I can treat them however, because that's the rules that are laid down in here. Like I can speak to them however,
as long as we're
because
honest.
It's a safe space, right? But there seem to be no dealings on how to speak to someone respectfully, right? And not be cutting them off in the middle of like them telling their story, and now you just want to you just want to monopolize all the time in there by talking about your things, right? So there has to be etiquette even within like a truthful space, right? And you just felt like that wasn't being, and I also felt like that wasn't being acknowledged in that book. Like they were just kind of moving over that, and it's just like truth reigns, whatever. Yeah. Speak however, scream at people, do whatever it was you want, and that like that's the way that they did things. And we felt like through that 5 years, at first it was like a year that went by, then it was 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and it was 5, just,
and then 7.
And you're like, okay, so what's happening here? And she very, very, I won't say nonchalantly, I would say proudly proclaimed at the end that she's a lifer. She's going to be in this group therapy for as long as she possibly can. I can only imagine the amount of money that this dude is making, or that various therapists are making within these groups, right?
This was like in the early 2000s, and she was paying $840 a month in like 2002 or whenever the heck this was happening.
And that's one person, and there would be like 6 or 7 people in one group.
And he had like 3 to 5 groups or something like that.
Yeah, so he was definitely making some good money.
Yeah.
But so now we're reading this and we're losing, or this module of or model, I should say, of therapy is losing credibility with us, like as we're reading along. It seems like what's really happening is he just wrangling in money. Like, are these people, is this a cult? Even she questioned whether it was a cult various times.
Cultish feeling, yes.
Because he seemed to just be at the head of it with a lot of power, and you know, and it was just giving out prescriptions to people. You know, it's just very, very interesting stuff. Either way, then I start thinking about it more and more as I'm reading it, and I'm thinking about this person that's clearly has a lot of issues going on in her mind, and is going to a therapy group, and I'm like, you know, I've known people to go to therapy, and I very rarely get in-depth accounts of what's going on. Like I heard people minimalistically talk about it, like very sparingly. I go in, you know, we kind of talked about this thing. They kind of helped me realize like this is a thing that I do, you know, or this is a set of words that I have a resistance to for some reason, or you know, whatever the case is. And then some people get out, some people stay in, but you can still see them just working through quite so much years and years into therapy. Yeah. And you start to ask yourself this question, like pharmacology. You start to ask yourself, is this a short term sort of thing you're supposed to be doing? Like when people put you on meds, you're like, oh, the pharmaceutical industry, they're always just trying to put people on drugs and just keep them on there. They don't want to give them any other recourse to like getting better. But people heavily support therapy. And are we asking the question of, is therapy something that's supposed to help you get out of therapy? Or is therapy supposed to be something that shows you that you will always be here and there's always work to be done and you will always need a therapist in order for that to happen? Like, I don't know. I haven't spoken to different people. I'm certain that different people do it differently. Sure. The woman you went to was your experience and it was very different than other people's experience.
For sure.
You felt like it was just very lackluster.
What I think that the issue could be, I could be completely wrong. I feel as though accountability is huge, and I don't know whether it's the format of what a professional should look like in a therapist setting, whether it's a counselor or a mediator or a psychologist or psychiatrist, whatever it is that it's your fault, or it's not your fault, but you are responsible, which I think it's something that I think lacked huge in a huge way in this book, was that I think safe spaces can be extremely dangerous, because you can realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this thing, and you talk about it in group and you smash plates, but there's no practices set in place to just realize where this came from, why you want to smash this plate, why you are smashing the plate, and should we keep smashing the plates? You know, it's just like, oh, like you smash the plates here in group.
You know, there is such a thing as safe and uncomfortable. You know, there is such a thing as being able to know that you're in a space in between four walls and a ceiling, right, and a floor, and that ultimately you feel like it's safe. Like there's no real impending danger coming in. Like you can feel that. And then you can also conceptualize within that same space, there's something going on inside of it that makes you a little uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean that it's unsafe.
Yeah.
So I feel like there is a balance there. Like you do want to make a safe space, as I try to do here, and just in general, trying to facilitate a safe space, because you want people to feel comfortable enough to express, because if it's not safe, they're not going to express.
Yeah.
You know, so you're going to want that, and at the same time, just give this level of discomfort through growth, because growth is uncomfortable. Like it's not a comfortable process to go through. And so just to wrap this up, that was our progression throughout the book. And then as I'm reading it, I'm thinking about this person going into this group, because she's speaking about the time she's going in a lot. She's speaking like, oh, I got to go in now 3 times a week, you know, for an hour and a half here, an hour and a half there. And I'm thinking about it. I'm like, even for her going 2-3 times a week, like it's a lot. But in the true nature of everything, it's not a lot. Right? Like an hour of your time goes by so fast. Right? Like
it was more so, every group was an hour and a half.
An hour and a half goes by so fast, right? A year goes by fast. So an hour and a half goes by very fast.
Yes.
So the point being, if you go somewhere for an hour and a half, and that is now, as I brought back before, and this is where we're in this, an enclave, right?
Yeah.
Then that is what you do there in that space. Once you leave those doors, you are back in regular ass life with people living all sorts of different ways, but ultimately kind of still in one swath of a way, right? Which is absent-minded, not always super considerate, not always emotionally regulated, right? All these types of things. Not particularly wise. Now, the reason why I brought that into play was because you were really thinking about it. You're like, man, what the fuck is therapy like really doing for people if you have to stay engaged for so long? Like there has to be some other implementation of mindfulness and meditation and psychedelics that could improve the efficacy or the efficiency of this thing. We can get there quicker. We can get there better. Like these were the thoughts these were the conversations we were having. And then I say to you, let's be blessed and let's be grateful that we're in a situation where this is where we live.
This is our life,
We live inside of it.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to a place where they feel like it's safe, but it's a little uncomfortable, so they can do a little bit of growing. And if you know anything about being in that zone, it's like being in a float tank where time goes. You have no real, perception of time. It just goes. So you're sitting there and you feel like you're really getting into something. And as soon as you really start to get into something, it's like beep, like, oh, we're out of time for today. Like, I'll see you again next week. Or however often you go. And then you go back out into life where people are not practicing what was practiced in that room. So when you go back out in the world and your friends and your family and your acquaintances and all that, so your coworkers are not a part of that enclave. They're not a part of that that sort of covenant, right? That that is housed by these rules and these understandings, these wisdoms, then it's going to take a long time to get through a lot of things. It doesn't mean you should stop doing it.
It's probably better than to do it, because I don't think people hardly ever get there. You know, I'm thinking of your friend that has these bad relationships with these certain words, you know, that doesn't
I think a lot of people have those, by the way.
Yeah, I do too. But, you know, from what I understand, like, she speaks about it, like, she recognizes that there's probably an issue here because she found this out through therapy, whether the therapist probably pointed this out to her. But it seems like it stops.
/ me.
Oh, right.
Because I most certainly pointed some words out that I felt like it was like, okay, I'm explaining things and I use this word and there's a resistance, right? But then I'll do the other thing where I just speak without using that word, and I'll describe that word in other ways, and then we're on equal footing, and I'm like, all right, well, you know that is this word, right? And they're like, well, how is that word? And then I would have to, you know, expound and get into it. And I believe one of the words was control.
Yes.
You know, it was like taking control of a situation, and there seemed to just be a huge resistance around taking control. Yeah. You know, versus sort of just giving a space for things to happen, and how that may be a sense of taking control of a situation. It was just like relinquishing what you felt like was control, you know, is taking control over a situation, and just having to reform that concept is like, oh, you like reconceptualize the whole idea around it. And you're like, oh, okay, like that word isn't bad, right? Like people have that with the word manipulate. People have that with the word moist. People have that with a lot of different words that they just inherently like don't like for whatever reason. So yeah, that's a very, very interesting book. Yeah. I definitely was not blown away by it, but it was.
I think she did a great job writing her story.
Yeah, for sure.
She did a beautiful job writing her story, and the beginning, it got me excited. It got me going. I couldn't wait to come home and read that book after work. Yeah, but what made me realize, you know, through this conversation here today and reading this book and everything else in life is that, you know, we value and we partake in constant self-exploration, you know, through conversation, through psychedelics, through meditation, through challenges that we bring upon ourselves or just the world brings to us, you know. And I think that's huge. I think that's what lacks, you know, because you can accept like, oh yeah, maybe I do have this issue with this word, but it often seems like those certain types of issues just stop there. You know, there's no true exploration or just a real, what am I looking for? Just like a search, a wanting to figure out why this is the case and like, should I try to move on from that? And what does that look like for me? You know, what practices do I have to set in place? What do I have to bring in? What do I have to let go of? And I think that's huge, because if I'm still smashing plates in group therapy 7 years later and no one has told me that is a huge issue, and then I figure that out later, I'm like, something's got to change. Yeah, but
I get it. It's difficult to look out and think that the large group that you cohabitate with is incorrect. In a fundamental way in which they live, or you know what I mean? It's very, very difficult.
Because I come from the opposite. You know, I realized that I realized in the past few years that the large group, which is life that I've always existed in, never like was truthful to me. So like I feel like I'm constantly.
I know that's the exact point that I'm saying.
Oh, I guess
is that it's very difficult to be in that state, and that's simply because you had to be around someone that was constantly questioning
everything
what you had come to understand as total existence for humans,
which was everything,
right? And so you had to sit there and like keep wrestling with ideas that were contrary to what you had been existing inside of. So, but if you're not doing that, it's very difficult to just hear like a person or a group of people speak about something and then think that they have a wisdom that millions of people or billions of people do not have. You're like, what is this? And this goes back to the advanced technology seeming like magic.
Yeah.
It's very, very easily to discount. It's very easy to discount it. So I don't condemn people that see all of the mind matrix, escape as a magic, as a conjuring of magic and just a bunch of nice flippant words from someone that speaks poetically about it. I completely understand that, and I think we should end it there. We should get out of here and continue on with our day.
Awesome.
How do you feel about it?
I feel good, man. You know what I like, and it's talking about my feelings. So
if anybody would like to know how I'm feeling these days, I would like for everyone, and if not, still go listen. You'll love it, to a song by the name of the artist Camp, the band Camp.
CAAMP.
Yes, a song in particular of love and life. Beautiful for this time of year. Fall, if you experience autumn wherever you are, and even if not, it may not even matter. It's a beautiful song.
It's a beautiful
Listen
song.
to it. That song is my spirit animal.
And really, most of all of their music, especially that album that song is on, In Lavender Days, they're just beautiful. It's just beautiful.
It just encompasses a whole feeling.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Yeah, anyway, I think it helps bring on gratitude.
All right, I'm out of here.
All right,
you trying to keep talking?
I like talking.
All right, peace, everybody.
Bye.
Peace.